Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Conversations, revelations, and inspirations behind the books. You never know where the conversation will lead us, so let's find out.
Good evening, listeners. I'm Amy Shannon, and tonight we have guests with us. Thank you for joining us, and will you please introduce yourselves and let people know how they can connect with you?
Hey there. I'm Ben.
I'm Karen.
Yeah. We write together. We're a married couple. We write together under BK Gibson as our open pen name. We write fantasy and sci-fi stories by and large. If you want to get in touch with us, bkgibson.com is our website. We're probably most active on Twitter as at BK Gibson Writes, all one word. And we'll be tagging this episode when it comes out too. So that's probably the best way to get hold of us.
Yeah. Okay. And the your website will be in the description of this episode when it airs. So, how long have you two been writing together?
Let's see. It really started a couple years into marriage. I've written since I was in college, and Ben has written off and on different things as well, probably since college time. And so when we got married, I was working on a book. And we started working on it together. He didn't do a lot of writing, but he kind of helped me edit what I was going through. And I would say the writing started a couple years into marriage. So at this point, it was like 13 years.
Yeah, we're about to have 16 years married. So it started, which was me editing what Karen had. I actually started writing. I think a lot of people have that story. I think I started writing as before I was a teenager, even fan fiction for games I was playing and that sort of thing.
That's right.
But
It fun.
It became a little more serious later.
So I always find it interesting when you have a co-author, whether you're married or just having a co-author, and how that works with the story. Because when you read it, whether you have one author or many, two, it should always sound like it's all in one voice type of thing. So how does that work with you two?
Well, we do a couple different things. So we'll go back and forth and write sections. And so sometimes it's interspersed very closely in the scene, like paragraph by paragraph. Other times it's chapter by chapter. But then afterwards, we will go back and heavily edit each other's work. So it's like we're kind of trying to blend our styles somewhere in between. And then I guess we have very compatible styles to begin with too.
Yeah, we have a lot of the same favorite authors for both fantasy and science fiction. We have a lot of similar books that we grew up on, and so similar backgrounds as far as that goes. So our influences are very similar as well. Yeah. It's never been hard to jump into different voices and registers, although we write a wild variety of different registers. We'll do some humor stuff. Our most recently published sci-fi story is a lower decks, a bunch of scrub crew mechanics desperately trying to fight possums in the middle of a space battle, kind of a high adventure, but a high humor stuff. And then we'll also write epic fantasy, that has sweeping stuff. So we have different voices, and we like to play with those different voices. But we always edit each other's stuff, and it helps that neither of us have ego about either of us editing. I don't mind if Karen completely changes something. She's like, this doesn't work. We basically listen to each other 100%.
We murder each other's darlings.
Yes, we will happily murder each other's darlings. Yeah.
Well, that actually kind of answers my next question of how obviously you're married and you've been writing, so you work very well together. But has there ever been like, no, you can't do that, no, this should not happen? Did you ever disagree on the way the story was going, or you wanted to kill off a character that the other one wanted to keep alive?
Well, he did kill off a character once that I was very attached to, but in the end, I allowed him to.
Because it was the right.
Because it was the right. Yeah. I'd say we do disagree sometimes, but then we just discuss it, and we come to the same conclusion usually. There's some give and take there.
It helps that we outline. We are definitely not seat of the pants writers. Like, we heavily outline. We work out our outlines for anything, even so not just novel length, even for the short story, like the shorter fiction. We always have an outline that we work on together, and the outline's usually a conversation where we both have ideas. And usually I will have, like, it should work this way, and Karen will start asking me questions, like questioning, why does it make sense? Why does it do this? So it's a
Right.
back and forth conversation we usually have for our outline. So
Mm-hmm.
we modify the outline, but we usually, we have the outline pretty clean
Mm-hmm.
when we're starting.
We're pretty close to it, yeah.
That's really good. So, the book that you sent me, Freedom's Vow, is that your latest book?
Yes. So it's interesting. So that is going to be our first published novel. We have written a lot. We've written, oh gosh, what, 12 novels at this point.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it, there was some of it is, you talk to publishers, traditional publishers, and you kind of do the long wait for the slush pile kind of stuff.
Right.
But also, we always kept writing.
Mhm.
Like, at all
Yeah.
times we wanted to keep writing, and so,
new books, not just like the same
right,
book over
not
and over
rewriting
again. Yeah.
the same thing, but just do a new story. So we've always been building that, and we always kind of had the idea of, if we're going to go independent, then we need to have a big backlog. We want to have a large number of stuff. We want to have a large number of novels, and I'm really grateful we did that, because the first couple novels, especially the first one,
Yeah.
not
Not gonna work.
no, it's really nice. Those never see the light of day.
Yeah, it's all
Some
good.
elements of the worlds might be there, but no.
Yeah. You gotta practice somewhere.
Yeah. So I'm glad we're doing that. But now we have, so Freedom's Vow is the first in an epic fantasy trilogy set in, like, a Greek-inspired secondary world. We have the entire trilogy written, however. So before this one drops, we have the second one. The second one is in the dev edit / alpha read sector. The third one is in just first draft. So it's doing revisions now, but we wanted to be at least done with that. We wanted to not be the Patrick Rothfuss style, let's have a trilogy and then have the last one take forever. We wanted to, if we're going to release a series, we want to have stories that are finished. And Freedom's Vow ends in a satisfying place. You don't have to continue on, but there is more to it, and we wanted to have the whole story written before we start releasing that, because I feel like it's just letting people down.
Yeah, I mean, you make a promise to the reader when you say, "Hey, this is the first book of 3," and you intend to keep that.
Yeah, I've seen that with some other authors. They say this is the first book in this series, but then there's never a follow-up book. People
Yeah.
are waiting, and that happens. I always recommend it, unless you're going to, you have it written or even worked out. Don't say this is book one of a series if it's only going to be just book one.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And I really find it so interesting how well that you work together. Do you would you ever publish something on your own as separate?
So this thing is, we do both. There are some books that we have that are, I've written more of the first draft, and there's some that she has written more of the first draft. Thing is, I love Karen's insight. I would never not want her to be heavily editing. Like, she would be, even if I did the whole first draft, 100%, there was no point in which I wouldn't want, because I respect Karen too much as a writer and as a reader, to not want it to have her, like, look over it and closely dev edit and listen to everything she had to say. I think you kind of feel the same way.
I do feel the same way. Yeah.
And that's kind of, obviously it works for you, and I think that you have an advantage that maybe some other authors don't have, is that you can edit each other's work, you can be honest with each other about it, and you probably make compromises, but also, like you mentioned, her also as a reader. And I think that's something that other authors don't realize. When you get to a point in your book, you should read it as if you were the reader,
Mm.
not the author, just the reader. A lot of times when I'm writing, um, I want to read how my book, like in the format is. So I'll put it on my Kindle so I can read it, because sometimes things will jump out at you on that, or I print it out if it's going to be in paperback, that kind of thing. And I always read it aloud because you're forced to read every single word. And that helps with editing. I found that too. And it makes it, when you're looking at, when you're doing the dialogue, saying it out loud, you can see how, if it flows like it should when you're talking. I've seen people write that where maybe two people are talking, and a writer might have each time they would be addressing each other by name, and that doesn't happen in real life.
Mm, yeah.
I don't have people, I mean, I have my kids calling me mom, but if I'm having a conversation, I'm not going to say, "Oh, Joe, how are you doing?" And then, "Joe, are you going to the store?" That's
Yeah.
not how conversations work.
Right.
Because
Right.
I can see how, after a while, if you're going back and forth, you could be like, said Joe, but not necessarily address them. So
Yeah.
whatever makes it flow. And as taking it as a reader, that is something very important. And as long as you're writing for yourself and not, you're writing for your characters, you're writing for yourself, whatever comes out of your mind is for you. Because people try, they target readers, of whatever they like, like epic fantasies and things like that. But you shouldn't think, "Oh, what would this reader like?" Because you can't please everybody, you know.
Mm.
So you're right for yourself, and I think that is wonderful, and that you two have an advantage that some other people don't, because some writers feel very alone.
Mm.
I'm always telling them, like, you can call me, you're not alone, but because they don't have somebody that they could talk to about their work, because some people are just, again, just talking about this book,
Mm.
where you guys can actually just, talk to each other. You have each other. So you two are very fortunate. And
We feel very blessed with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It's funny you said dialogue, because that's probably the single biggest difference in our voices.
Oh, yeah.
Karen loves a dialogue tag. She will tag every single bit of dialogue. I might have a pathological hatred of dialogue tags. You see me, I will have almost none. So we
Like,
probably
who's
compromise.
talking?
That's probably the biggest differences in
Yeah.
our voices. Like,
Yeah.
you will see her tag every single thing, and you'll see
Yeah.
me tag way too few. So
yeah, there is a balance in it, like, especially, and if there's more than one person speaking, then you kind of have to tag who's talking. But if you're going back and forth, after a few lines, remind somebody, because I know I've done that, be like going back after reading it, I'm like, wait a minute, do I have who's talking where correctly?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that is always something that is, very important. And I know to look for it and make notes of all the stuff, like reuse words that I overuse. I have a little notebook, and so when I go to edit, I'm like, yep, look for this word. But the words I know a lot in dialogue, or I understand when they shouldn't know, or they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, I keep track of it. It's good if you know, your own writing style, and then you add it, and then I go back in and I just take it all out, but I still write it.
Exactly. And yeah, so yeah, I really appreciate working together. It means it's also something, because writing is very time consuming. It does a lot of, it's something intrinsically rewarding. If you don't like to write, then you should not write. But it is really nice to have something that we can share.
Yeah.
It's been something that we can do. It's something we can do like we do together. And that's been a huge thing too.
To the point where the kids get a little exasperated. They're like, "Why are you talking about your book again?"
There's some eye rolling.
There is some eye rolling.
Yeah, I get that. But yet, behind your back, they're like, guess what? Mom and Dad write. And
Yeah.
author. I've had that with my sons when they were young. They'd be like, Mom, are you writing another book? Or working on it. And then, but yet, if I have them on my shelf and they bring their friends over, they're like, well, I told you my mom was an author, but other than that,
It's fun.
but they love it. They don't mind. And They like it when I actually read it to them, because I switched my genres not that long ago, and I'm just doing nonfiction, historical, and I started writing children's books, and they loved it when I started. They're like, just read it to me, Mom. So that just felt good, because I used to do that. I mean, I have all boys, so it's very hard. It was very hard to find like age appropriate for boys stories. A lot of them were for girls, and so that was something that I would just write stories for them, and they love being main characters in the story. So and would read it to them. But even stuff that my son liked, it was it was meant for girls, but it was something that it was age appropriate. So he would end up reading that, because there's not that much out there, especially between like the ages of 7 and 11. There's, for boys, I mean, they have a whole bunch of stuff for girls. I mean, I even go back and read stuff I read as a kid, but there's not a lot that was for boys. So
yeah, we actually I don't know if you are familiar with Raconteur Press.
Yes.
We've actually been on some of their anthologies. We love their pulp, aesthetics in general, but they've recently started releasing what they're calling their boys books line.
Yeah,
which is, directly addressing that. And our boys are exactly in the age range for it. Like right now, they are exactly 6, 11, and they have loved it. They've loved and we actually sent one into them, a middle grade novel. But it was a bit of a different experience to have a middle grade, kind of a Jules Verne sci-fi novel. That was a lot of fun. It's a different register. It's a different kind of a tone, but yeah, it's desperately needed. I really like their project. I'm really glad they're doing that, because it's been it's a huge deal.
I've interviewed several of their authors. Their PR guy, he always sends me not only his stuff, but their anthologies and the authors, because when I heard that's what they were doing, I was like, couldn't have done this 20 years ago. My boys would have loved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that somebody's finally doing that and realize that, because that's it's a target audience that, what the boys read. I mean, we're telling girls to get involved with STEM and all that stuff, but boys should enjoy reading just as much as girls do. And if they love reading as a child, they'll grow up, they'll be a reader, maybe they'll be a writer, but they'll have gone on journeys that they never had to leave, the comfort of their own home. And they also inspire imagination, because the kids want to be, go outside and play, and no screens, and become the warriors, or slay the dragon, or something like that.
Very important.
It's a big deal. We are a big fan of just, I mean, even honestly, we have a girl too, and she honestly loves those adventure stories more than a lot of the ones that are targeted for girls. She loves those adventure stories too. She also enjoys the fantastic adventures.
They're reading a series right now at the same time. So
the older two.
The older two are, so they're talking about it together.
That's great. I love that. That is, especially when siblings can share something like that. That is amazing. And more children need to use their imagination.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and very important.
No, it's a big deal, and yeah, I'm glad that I'm glad you're in contact with Sam Robb, who is
Yeah.
he's the raconteur guy. He also, it's actually interesting. He also writes himself. He's diffident usually. He doesn't usually when he's talking to booktubers, he doesn't often talk about it, but he writes quite interesting. His sigil series with Rack was, it was not aimed at younger boys, but it's something that's also decent enough that I would have.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I wouldn't have a problem with. I'd have my 6-year-old probably wouldn't want it, but the
Yeah.
11-year-old would be
Yeah.
fine for it. That kind of thing.
Hmm.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, his work is pretty amazing. So I'm like, you could send your stuff too. So he
Yeah.
does.
right. Well, it's actually interesting. We are so for Freedom's Vow. Sam Robb has the first of his Road Mage series. He is also, he is also the two of us are the first two authors for this imprint, Celine Press's imprint. We're working with J.F. Holmes has a sci-fi, and it's mostly been sci-fi, military fantasy kind of stuff, called Canon Publishing. He's been doing that for a while. He's got a good rep, but he is trying to work on a fantasy imprint, because there's overlap, but there are also some differences too. We are overlapping, but a secret we learned very, very quickly is that writers are not very good representative readers in terms of audience or anything like that.
Right.
But for Celine, the first two, so we're releasing ours May 19th. Sam Robb is releasing his May 17th, and we are the first two novels out of this imprint, even though they've been around for a long time. So the fantasy imprint. So it's kind of exciting that we're working close with him. He's a really good guy.
Yeah,
Can endorse.
definitely.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Great guy. And yeah, I just read the book that's coming out. So it's already, my review's already written and ready to be posted for
Awesome.
him. So yeah, I just, it's sometimes I just get connected to people,
Mhm.
and I love my platform now. I'm talking to authors and I get to talk about what I like. And it's not just talking about the actual story, but what makes up that story that I find is very interesting. So how do you, so for this one, this is the first of the trilogy. So
Mhm.
what really inspired you to write this particular book?
Well, it's interesting. I actually had a dream once, and it was about like the setting and kind of the magic, which is kind of cliche. It's like I had a dream and I got a book out of it. But
I have the same thing. I have
it's interesting how that works. Yeah. And then I had like a basic idea of the magic, and then Ben heard it and he was like, this would be amazing to set in ancient Greece. And that was because of the magic is very influential on armies. And I'll let Ben explain that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a spoiler. So
Yeah.
the people who have access to magic in the system are called shepherds. So it's the Shepherd trilogy. They can kindle emotions, passions in people. That is kind of that's their thing. They can inspire rage or fear or courage or calm. So Karen and I were, Karen was telling me about her idea, and I said, this is cool. Then I said, where that would really be most influential is not really is in classical era, warfare with shield lines and the phalanx. And anytime when there was, a bunch of men who had to be staying in a line, it's all about courage. It's all about morale. It's all about that. And we also were talking, we've also, I love history. We've always loved myths, and we loved the thought of, going something that was Greek inspired. It's not ancient Greece, but it is Greek inspired. We love the thought of it's familiar. We know what it is. We know what a hoplite looks like. We know what the phalanx is. We know we know what a minotaur is and a centaur is, but it's not as it's not as full of tropes as high medieval era fantasy, which I mean, I'm not going to ever diss the
Oh,
tropes.
there's definitely a place for that, and a lot of people enjoy that and look for that. But ours is it's different, and we enjoy having that. It was fun to write.
It was a lot of fun to write.
That's the best time, when you take your characters and you put them in a setting that you wouldn't normally think of. You know, I always found that, and see what happens. I have this saga, which got 67 volumes, and I'm just publishing them just twice a week, Monday and Fridays, until they're completely released. But I made up a town, and they would be in the middle of the desert. But I was trying to think of things that might throw them off. So I had where they got flooded. So it seems how different characters would react. And then an earthquake, things like it wouldn't normally happen in that particular area, but you put people in a situation where they wouldn't normally be. And tropes are perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
I have nothing against them too. I love it when I don't know, I can't predict the ending. I have that as a writer, and I've talked to a lot of writers too. It's like, my kids hate watching movies with me because I know what's going to happen next. And I used to say it out loud. Now I don't say it all. And then if I'm wrong, then I'm like, I love this movie because I had no idea how it was going to end. Or, reading a book, when I don't know how it's going to end. Because you think of how would you write it, and you don't want it to be predictable, or some stereotypes are perfectly fine because some people just fit within a stereotype even though they don't really mean to, and you don't have to say it's a stereotype. But then you just have where the characters are like people. And one time I had a person correct me because I wrote people instead of characters in my review. And she's like, they're not people, they're characters. I'm like, okay, my characters are people.
Yes.
So I find it very interesting, how, and they perceive it like that. And then there's the writers that they write, but they want they write it like, so it's the perfect technique, but there's like no passion behind it. I can read a book and know if the person or persons who wrote it loved writing it, because it shows, how how you tell your story. Everybody has their own writing style. I think that no one person has a writing style like anyone else. Everybody has their own little personal thing. And I'm sure that you two each have your own little personal thing, and you probably leave that in there as well. You don't take away your voice, but it's also all in one voice.
Yeah, and basing that on characters that's the good way to do it, because we are interested as people hearing about people. That's what we care about. That's what emotions are. I've loved. There are 3 protagonists in this series, Freedom's Vow. So we started really enjoying the people, enjoying interacting, enjoying seeing the characters, enjoying seeing how they grow or how they fail, and then grow from that. We really, that's kind of where everything comes from. So the story, I guess, spoiler alert, the good guys win, but there are going to be some things you predict, but if people are layered and the characters are like people, then there's always going to be variations. There's always going to be interest. So you don't have to be right, because people are contradictory.
Yes.
We have, we're both Christian. We have this is a set in a pre-Christian world. That's not like a Christian fiction book, but it is. Anything we do write, we do really have a desire to have truth and beauty shown. and
Yeah.
to like to tell true and real things about people, to
Mhm.
to admire things that are good and to decry things that are evil. That is kind of part of the important things. But if you just write people, you can see they have all of that mixed up in them, and you can see their
Yeah.
triumphs and their growth as they go through that.
Yeah, and characters should grow, even if their growth is like they're de-evolving, they're changing, they're going backwards in something, but
Mhm.
they're moving in some way. I have a villain who I loved to write for because he was a jerk and it was fun to write for. But he had one little thing, one quirk that he didn't want anybody to know about, and it was the fact that he's this evil doctor doing experimentation on people, but he loved the show Full House. It was just a little type of thing that, I don't want to tell anybody about that. I'm embarrassed by it. But,
Mm.
that even though he was this evil man, he wasn't a monster. He was a man who did terrible things. But, there was that one guilty pleasure that, he didn't want anybody to know because he wanted to be looked at as bigger than a man, but he really wasn't.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely, I mean, people will in real life change all the time. It's like no one is static.
Yeah.
We've seen that. Yeah.
You're either changing for the worse or changing for the better,
Yeah.
or more often than not, a little bit of
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
some of both.
My father had passed away last month, but I something I had said when I was talking about him was that, like all of us, he had different versions of himself, and there were certain versions that I loved better than others, and when you think about that in life, that's basically the same thing. I mean, and even as say a couple, the way you talk to each other, you may talk to someone else in a different way, or you're in a different setting, like whether you're talking to your best bud or you're at the doctor's or wherever, you're not that same person as when you talk to each other, or just, sitting around being with each other. It's very different. Um, and we all have different versions of ourselves, and I think too that, we all have perfections and flaws, and sometimes they're the same thing. Because perfect doesn't have to mean that it's a good thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
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 But
That's part of
I,
it.
yeah, I really want to thank you both for being on the show. You're welcome to come back again, especially when your book 2 and book 3 are ready to come out. I would love to talk to you both again.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Really enjoyed this.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for listening. Feel free to comment on this show or any show, and join me again next week for more great conversation. And if you want to check out my work, just Google me. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.
Thank you for listening to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. If you wish to be a guest on the show, you can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Please follow this podcast on Spotify, even if you listen to it on other streaming sites. Also, this podcast is on every first Monday and last Monday of the month at 7 p.m. and every Sunday at 6 and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.